The town of Dust Creek was little more than a scatter of wooden buildings, clinging to the rail line and the hope of gold that had never truly come. A place where cowboys drifted in for whiskey, supplies, or the occasional card game, and then drifted out again into the wide silence of the plains. And on a sunburnt morning that seemed no different from 100 before it, Luke Hardin rode in on his sorrel horse with nothing more on his mind than picking up flour, bullets, and a new bridle strap, the routine business of a man who lived alone and asked little of the world. But fate rarely announces itself. It hides in plain sight until the moment it strikes. And that morning, as Luke tied his horse outside the general store and stepped onto the boardwalk, his eyes caught sight of something he could not ignore. A young woman standing in front of the depot with nothing but a carpetbag at her feet and desperation in her eyes, her dress plain and dust-stained from travel, her bonnet shielding her face but not her trembling hands. And though the townsfolk passed her by without a second glance, Luke felt the stir of something that made him pause, for there was a loneliness in her that mirrored his own. He overheard enough from the murmurs around him to piece together the truth. She was a mail-order bride who had traveled hundreds of miles, only to be abandoned by the man who was supposed to claim her, a gambler who had skipped town the night before, leaving her stranded and shamed in a place where kindness was scarce. And as Luke watched her lower her head against the sting of whispers, he felt a fire kindle in his chest, the same fire that had made him draw his gun when outlaws threatened innocents on the trail, the fire that whispered a man could walk away from trouble or he could stand. And Luke Hardin was not a man who turned his back, so he crossed the street, his boots heavy, his shadow falling across her as he tipped his hat and spoke in a voice steady but gentle. "Ma'am, you look like you could use a hand." She lifted her eyes, startled, and for a moment the world around Luke disappeared. For her gaze was not just sad, it was strong, defiant even in her despair. And when she whispered her name, Clara Whitfield, it settled into his heart like a brand. Though he had not come to town seeking anything but supplies, he found himself saying words that surprised even him. "Well, Clara, how'd you like to ride home with me instead?" Clara could hardly believe what she had heard, her heart pounding as she studied the tall cowboy before her, his eyes calm, his hands steady, the kind of man who spoke little but meant every word. And though fear urged her to doubt, hope made her nod, whispering yes before she had even thought it through. And so it was that a woman abandoned at the depot found herself climbing onto the horse of a stranger, clutching her carpet bag, as the town's whispers followed them out into the open plains. But what she expected to find at Luke's ranch was nothing like what she discovered, for though his land was vast and his herd strong, his home was simple, built by his own hands, its walls scarred by storms yet standing proud. And when he opened the door for her, saying only, "It ain't much, but it's honest," Clara felt more welcome than she ever had in her life. And though the first days were awkward, two strangers circling each other like wary animals, soon a rhythm grew between them. She cooked while he mended fences. She planted herbs in the dry soil while he broke wild horses. And in the evenings, they sat together on the porch, the silence between them filled, not with emptiness but with a quiet peace neither had known. And little by little, Clara shed the fear that she was unwanted, for Luke never treated her as a burden nor as a possession. Instead, he listened when she spoke. He laughed softly when she teased him, and he looked at her with an honesty that made her feel seen. And as weeks turned to months, their lives twined together like roots beneath the soil. Yet trouble was never far in the Wild West, and soon word spread that the gambler who had abandoned Clara had returned, bringing with him a band of rough men who sought to claim what he said was rightfully his, for in his twisted mind, Clara was still his bride, his property, and the thought of another man, especially Luke Hardin, stepping in to take her was an insult he would not abide. When Clara heard the whispers of his return, fear gripped her heart and shame clawed at her. "Luke, maybe I should leave. I've brought nothing but trouble," she said, tears brimming, but Luke only set his rough hand over hers, his voice like iron. "Clara, you're not a burden. You're not someone's mistake to be tossed aside. You're mine now, and I'll stand against any man who tries to take you from me." And in that vow, Clara realized that the errand which had brought him to town had brought her something far greater than supplies. It had brought her a husband in every way that mattered, though neither had spoken the word aloud. The night the gambler returned, the air was heavy with the scent of smoke and the cries of coyotes, the sky torn open with lightning as if the heavens themselves were bracing for the storm to come. And when his gang rode up to the Callahan ranch, torches in hand, guns gleaming, Luke stood ready on the porch, rifle cradled in his arms, Clara standing behind him though he had begged her to stay inside. And the gambler sneered from the shadows, "She was promised to me, Hardin, and I aimed to take her back." But Luke's voice rang out clear against the thunder, "She was never yours, and she sure as hell ain't for the taking." Then the shooting began, fire lighting the night as bullets cracked and horses screamed, the ranch becoming a battleground where love and greed clashed. Luke fought with the fury of a man who had everything to lose, each shot fired not just for his land but for the woman who had turned his. No longer the timid bride abandoned at the depot, fought too, reloading his rifle, standing at his side, her courage blazing brighter than the flames that lit the barn, until at last the gambler himself charged forward, pistol raised, his voice snarling with rage. But before he could strike, Clara stepped out, her own hand steady on the gun Luke had taught her to use, her voice clear, "I was never yours, and I'll never be anyone's but his." And with that, she fired, ending the claim that had haunted her since the train stopped at Dust Creek. The gambler crumpled, his men fled into the night, and the ranch, though scarred, still stood. And as the dawn broke, Luke took Clara's hand in his eyes filled not with triumph but with awe, for he realized she had not only fought for herself but for him, changing him from a man content with silence into a man who understood love, family, and the power of standing side by side. "Clara," he whispered, his voice breaking with emotion, "I rode into town for supplies and came back with a bride who saved my life, and she," tears on her cheeks yet smiling brighter than the sunrise, whispered back, "No, Luke, you saved mine too." And in that moment, beneath the endless sky of the Wild West, they sealed their bond not with papers or promises, but with the unshakable truth that love, when chosen in the hardest of places, could turn even the loneliest cowboy into the luckiest man alive. Dear riders of the trail, if this story of love, grit, and redemption touched your heart, don't just ride off into the sunset. Subscribe to Wild West Stories and join us for more tales of courage, heartbreak, and destiny in the untamed frontier, because every legend starts with a single choice, and the next story might just change you forever.